Now, the Hunt Palmer Show. Now, the Hunt Palmer Show.
A magic beyond anything you could ever imagine.
You are now listening to the Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Sagrera Farms on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Locking down the middle of the day.
You really think that's the best idea?
Live from the Raising Cane studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
He's quite a piece of work.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer not coming to you from the Raising Cane studio downtown in the capital city, but for one more day here from Radio Row in Tampa, Florida. SEC Media Days 2026 wrapping up with 4 teams today. It is the Arkansas Razorbacks, it's the Texas Longhorns, it's the Mississippi State Bulldogs, and LSU going through the car wash today, and we'll be talking about that throughout the next 2 hours. Lock us in here. Our Thursday show is brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. We're going to start with some LSU stuff here in a moment. We're going to talk about Mississippi State a little bit later on in the show. You hear from Kelly Jones, Mississippi State defensive back. I had a chance to catch up with him a little bit earlier, and we'll play that for you in hour number 2. I want to talk about the Arkansas Razorbacks. We'll continue our in-depth chart series with LSU's safety play coming into 2026. So plenty to do on our final day here from Radio Row. Lock us in, and let's crank it up the way we do every day with our opening drive.
Welcome to the big league.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive. Presented by Fabry Chevrolet GMC in St. Francisville.
Well, the moment we've been looking forward to all week long happened this morning. Lane Kiffin taking the podium in front of the big print room here in Tampa, Florida. And Lane had a ball control plan. He was going to run the clock, and he certainly did that. He spoke for 17 minutes in his opening monologue, which shrinks the time for questions to be asked. And there were only 4 of them lobbed to the head LSU football coach. I've been asking all week, like, how many times is he going to take questions from the Mississippi media in that room? And there was really only one question directed about the decision to leave Ole Miss and the departure and then the Vanity Fair piece. And it was about the Vanity Fair piece. And essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but the question was, hey, you had a lot of draft picks, you had a first-round pick, you had really highly rated recruiting classes and transfer portal classes at Ole Miss. Do you feel like that could have been better, and is that why you went to LSU? And it was phrased around the comment made about lack of diversity in Mississippi. And it was a pointed question, and Lane made a quip at the beginning of his answer because the question started with, hey, you've got the 3rd most wins in the conference since 2002, and you've had all these top 10 picks. And he said, man, you were really being positive, and I had a feeling that was going somewhere. And it did. And he answered the question, I thought, very, very honestly. I'll never know exactly how Lane Kiffin feels. You can just take him for what it's worth, and there are some people that don't want to do that because they don't feel like you can trust him. But I thought he was being pretty honest in this answer. And here's the text, and I'll read it to you. It said, I made a challenging decision in changing jobs. I think as I look back to that, I thought I could find a way for everyone to understand. Now, as I look back later on, that was never going to happen. And to me, as I was sitting in the room and heard that, I went, that sounds honest. And it's the same thing I said a few weeks ago. This is not going to be a story that dominates the entirety of this college football season, but it is going to dominate the offseason and the first 3 weeks of the season. And we'll get beyond it at that point, but we're not beyond it right now. We're still having that discussion. And I do believe that Lane Kiffin just wanted the people from Ole Miss to say, understand you're leaving, but man, that was great 6 years. Thanks for that, man. And that was just not realistic. It just wasn't based in reality. If you make the decision to leave Ole Miss to go to LSU, that's going to make people mad at you forever in Mississippi, period. And it's not going to change, and nothing you can say is going to win them back. There's a tweet from Pete Thamel, and it's obviously from another room, but Kiffin told ESPN that he regrets the messy Ole Miss exit, and here's a quote from Kiffin. I wish I would have just said, hey, I'd like to coach the team. And he'd say no. And I'd say, hey, okay, I appreciate it, move on, and then never even discuss it again. That was the proper way to handle this. Like, that would have been the best way to say, hey, I am going to go. I'm not going to sign this contract extension. I'm going to go to LSU, but I'd like to finish with what this team has started. We're 11-1. We're going to the college football playoff. I'd like to do that. And then if Keith Carter and the chancellor go, no, then you just got to go. And you don't have to call the assistant coaches and say you can't. Like, he should have just got on the plane and taken the new job. That happens in coaching all the time. It happens every offseason. Now, not necessarily in those exact circumstances, but similar circumstances, and you just got to go. And he didn't do it, and then he tried to shape the narrative. And I thought the decision to go to LSU was a perfectly reasonable one that he made. I thought the way that he did it was messy. And I said that day, and I'll continue to say that today. It doesn't really matter. It's just an opinion. But I found the way that he handled that to be a little bit messy, and I think he realized that. And he then tried to shape the narrative again in Vanity Fair, and you just don't need to do that. You just need to let it be and do your new job. And I think he's doing that almost all hours of the day. It's just when some of these circumstances crop up, he trips up in terms of the PR, and I didn't like the way that was handled, but I thought he handled it very, very well today. Essentially, kind of laying the swords down and going, hey, I probably should have done that a little bit differently. My bad. And just kind of move on, and that worked. So it wasn't a contentious room. It wasn't a room filled with vitriol. It wasn't a room that was asking especially pressing questions. They didn't have an opportunity to. There were only 4 of them that were asked. So, I mean, he was talking about the Lane Kiffin rule in Congress and kind of gave him non-committal answer on that. Talked about playing Auburn, and Malik Blockton was a question. Like, talked about down the totem pole on things that we're trying to talk about. That's probably pretty far down there. But just wasn't a lot of time for Lane Kiffin in that room. He's certainly made the rounds elsewhere, but those are behind closed doors oftentimes, and we don't have access to those quotes or those comments. So as far as Lane Kiffin today in the main media room, not a lot of substance to what he was saying. Talking about him taking a break from social media. He did that because his son Knox said, hey, you're addicted to this thing and you can't give it up. And then Lane said, well, my kids kind of know how to get under my skin. They tell me I can't do something. I'm very likely to do it. And he said he's been very, very happy with the results of giving up social media. He spoke about how oftentimes in his life, when he takes something out of his life as opposed to adding something in, he gets a lot out of it. He's obviously talked about his decision not to drink alcohol anymore. He's obviously talked about his decision today to remove social media from his life. He talked about toxic relationships that he removed from his life and is able to get a little bit more centered. That's the deal that sounds absolutely spot on when you hear it, but you're also going to get the other side of it from people in Mississippi who go, yeah, he talked about that kind of stuff the whole time at Ole Miss and then burned the place down on the way out. So, like, there's a dichotomy in digesting the things that Lane Kiffin has to say. Some people just don't trust anything he ever says. Some people say, yeah, maybe he turned over a new leaf. Where you sit on that doesn't really matter. I think people in purple and gold are going to take him at his word right now, just like people at Ole Miss did for 6 years. And then something happened and they changed the way that they think about things. So it was I spent most of my time writing today on the players, and I thought that the players did a great job making the rounds in the media. We talked to them this morning in a local media session. We spoke with them in the big media room. You're going to hear from all 3 players on Matt's show later on today. I thought they did a great job. Candidly, here's the deal. When I saw the attendees from LSU, I went, that's a little underwhelming. Witt came last year. We've heard him talk a bajillion times. Trey Green is a lovely guy to be around, but he doesn't have like long sound bites. He's a kind of a quick talker. And then TJ Daugherty has been here for like 5 minutes. And so I looked at that and I was like, really would have liked to hear from Sam Levitt. Really would have liked to hear from some other new voice. And I was underwhelmed by the list when I saw it on paper. And then today, I thought those guys were great. I've got a couple of pieces up on LouisianaSports.net right now. One talks about the progression of Sam Levitt, and then the other one talks about the leadership on this team. And I thought there were some pretty powerful quotes on this that I'm going to get into in our next segment. I thought that what the guys had to say was very, very interesting today, and we'll get into all of that in our next segment. Appreciate our sponsors that have had us here all week long: FMOL Health, Our Lady of the Lake, Parish Construction and Roofing, Relief Windows, and Rev Fiber. It's been an awesome week here on Radio Row, meeting a lot of people, having a lot of great conversations, and we're wrapping it up with one final show here today. Matt will broadcast live from here after my show as well, and then we'll get back to Baton Rouge, and football season will be right around the corner. Sam Levitt, as I mentioned, not here. What's he doing? We'll talk about that when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Boudreaux's Electrical Services. Boudreaux's Electrical Services. Neil and Melissa have been at it with Boudreaux's Electrical for 40 years, serving the people of South Louisiana with their Generac home standby generators. If you do not have one, it's hurricane season. You know that. One just rolled through this week. Make sure you call the folks at Boudreaux's Electrical before the storm comes through. The last thing you want to do is be in a hot, dark house with no power and regretting the fact that you didn't call to get that Generac home standby generator installed by the folks at Boudreaux's Electrical Services. They will monitor it locally 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if there is a mechanical issue, they'll know about it. They'll send a local team out there to get it fixed so your power stays on even when the neighborhood goes dark. Give them a call at 985-397-1562, 985-397-1562, or 225-393-89. That's the Gonzales location. It's Boudreaux's Electrical Services.
Live from the 2026 SEC Football Media Days in Tampa. Presented by Parish Construction and Roofing. FMOL Health, Our Lady of the Lake. Relief Windows. And Rev Fiber.
Swing Easy Golf Club in Baton Rouge. SwingEasyGCBR.com is the website. Weekend is almost here. It might be tough to get a tee time considering the amount of rain South Louisiana has gotten this week. But if you'd like to play golf, you can do it inside at Swing Easy Golf Club. Got the simulators, private rooms, comfortable seating, cold drinks, music to play. Go by yourself, grab a crew, and get on by Swing Easy. They're on Segan at Perkins. At Swing Easy Golf Club. Play some golf on the simulator at Swing Easy Golf Club in Baton Rouge. All right, Hunt Palmer here on Radio Row, Tampa, Florida, SEC Media Days 2026. LSU's players in attendance today: Whit Weeks, Trades Green, and TJ Daugherty. Daugherty actually came last year with Ole Miss. Whit Weeks was here last year with LSU. I guess not technically here because it was in Atlanta, but they were at SEC Media Days. And then Trades Green making his first run through. And as I mentioned in the last segment, I was underwhelmed by those selections for various different reasons, but all three guys I thought were great today. And I got some information out of them and got some storytelling out of them as well. From a news perspective, I spoke with Trades Green about Sam Levitt, and Lane Kiffin told us that Sam Levitt was not here. He was leading a team practice back in Baton Rouge. And Trades Green says he talks to Sam Levitt every day. He says they throw 4 times a week, which leads me to believe that Levitt is healthy and moving around out there, which is something we have told you all about previously. And they love his leadership capabilities. They love his talent and his ability. Whit Weeks talked about Sam Levitt today in glowing terms, and I just cannot wait to watch this guy throw. He is really different. And the sense is that he is full steam ahead. That's not contrary to what we thought. We were under the impression that was the case, but by all accounts, Sam Levitt looks really, really good back in Baton Rouge. I was curious about the leadership portion of this football team because you bring in north of 50 new players between the more than 40 transfers and then the freshman class, which I believe was 17. So you got over 50 new players. You've got a new coaching staff on the offensive side of the ball. You've got new analysts, a new environment. Like, it is a complete turnover. And in a bygone era, you would look at that and go, okay, well, that's a rebuilding football team. Like, lower the expectations down a little bit. Well, not when you throw $40 million at the roster. You got a bunch of people talking about, can you win the SEC? Can you get to the college football playoff? Can you compete for a championship in year one? That's now the expectation. So for that to happen, you're going to have to gel pretty quickly. And Whit Weeks said that he and TJ Daugherty have become fast friends. They hang out all the time, that Daugherty has become a leader very, very quickly. I asked TJ Daugherty about being a leader on Ole Miss's team and then making the decision to transfer. Like, how quickly can you become a leader in a new place? And he said, well, I just stayed quiet early on, and I tried to win every sprint and win every rep and go as hard as possible. And then as that happened, you start to make some plays and scrimmages, you start to become a little bit more vocal. And he said that natural evolution has taken place over the last 7 weeks. So what you've got now is you've got the most productive linebacker core in the Southeastern Conference, maybe the country, when you consider that Whit Week was second in the SEC in tackles 2 years ago. Daugherty led the league in tackles last year. Devon Keys as well, who was second in the SEC in tackles. But you've got a ton of production there. You also got real leaders. And Whit Weeks said he thought it was going to be difficult for him to become the captain of the team again after being away so long and not practicing in the spring. We would go out to spring workouts, and Whit Weeks was just standing there. And it's just tough to become really tight-knit with guys when you're not out there doing the work with them. You're just kind of observing from the side. But he said that once he got back into shape, got healthy, he felt like it happened very, very quickly. And I liked what TJ Daugherty told me today. He said, look, everybody's got something new they're dealing with. It's either like me being new to LSU, or Whit has a new head coach, or you've got a new position coach. The guys on offense are dealing with a new coordinator. everybody's dealing with something new. There's nobody who's in the same spot they were last year. And because of that, it's brought us together. They've spent a lot of time together. They're hanging out a lot off the practice field. With said, it's easy to build relationships on the practice field. It's a lot tougher to do it off the practice field because you don't have to do that. But it sounds like a lot of that is happening at this point. So it's I've got a story up on it on LouisianaSports.net. It's a team that really feels like it's moving in the right direction. Now, look, it is talking season. And I will tell you that I was really impressed with the way guys were talking last year, and we know how that went. Winning heals all those types of things. But ultimately, we know this. You look at LSU's schedule. You look at that schedule. There's going to be adversity. I will be flatline stunned if LSU goes 12-0. Stunned if they go 12-0. So you're going to have to respond to those losses properly and don't let one snowball into another. Like, case in point, if you go to Oxford and you get beat, you can't sulk. Guess what's next? Texas A&M, who has boat raced you back-to-back years. And I think that's the point where this team's leadership gets tested, where this team's togetherness gets tested, where this team's commitment gets tested. Because, look, these guys get fat checks, okay? They get a lot of money. And those checks cash no matter what the scoreboard says. Nobody has an NIL contract that is tied to winning games. So it's easy to check out. Some of these guys are one-year mercenaries. You're in, you're out. And if that's all you care about and you don't have leadership and you don't have a team that's tight-knit, you can buckle. And that's what you're trying to guard against. Witt told a great story today in the main media room. He said, there may have been times the last 2 years where if I saw something I didn't like, I just kind of said, I just brushed it to the side. That doesn't happen anymore. If I see something I don't like, I point it out. If someone's not doing what they're supposed to do, I point it out. I can make sure of two things, that I take care of the things that I'm doing, and if I see something that I don't like, that I mention that. And he said that's a change. And I obviously have to take his word for it on that. I don't know what he's seen or what he's done in the past, but he's telling us that. And he said in the big media room today that he took last year personally. I didn't hear everything that he had to say on Matt's show, but he said that I took last year very, very personally. And that's tough because you look at a kid that tried to play. He got hurt in the Ole Miss game. He had that foot injury. He was having trouble walking. He said at one point he couldn't even stand up in the shower. But he tried to go out there and play, and then he had to miss games. And it's difficult to blame yourself when you can't control an injury and how quickly it heals or doesn't heal. He did enough to get back to play with his brothers in the Western Kentucky game, and then he gave it a little bit of a go against Oklahoma, but ultimately he couldn't do much of anything. But he said he took it personally, that LSU did not have the success that we wanted. LSU was a bit of a darling last year at this event. A lot of people picking LSU. A lot of people love Nussmeier's coming back. You've got the big transfer portal haul. You've got Blake Baker in year 2. You're going to stack the shelves at wide receiver, and you got a 5-star running back coming in, and a lot of people were really high on LSU, and we know that the bottom fell out. I actually said last year in my last segment of SEC Media Days, I went back and listened to this. I'd forgotten I said it, but I went back and listened to it from the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta, and I said, look, for LSU this year, I really only see 2 options. I think they're going to be really good or a punchline. And lo and behold, the punchline actually came true, and they fired their coach before Halloween, and it was a disaster. And the vibes around LSU are different this time around. Now, with Lane, there's a bit of a circus, and that impacts the vibe, right? But it's they're not a popular pick to win the league. Texas is, Georgia is, and that's kind of it. And so it's a different vibe this year, this time around, but it should be because it's an entirely different operation than it was this time last year. But I thought that the guys were really, really good. Tradez is going to be a star, and he's putting in a lot of work right now. I talked to him about his weight. I mean, we mentioned that he lost 20 pounds playing basketball, which is hard for me to believe, but lost 20 pounds playing basketball that first year. Did not take that time on the basketball court this past season, so he's in better shape. quite frankly, and that's a big problem for a lot of people around the Southeastern Conference. Let me remind you about my friends at the Highland Insurance Group. They're online at highlandig.com, highlandig.com. Jonathan Carbo and his team, awesome people to work with on the benefits front. If you are a business owner who is struggling on the bottom line with keeping your employees insured, call Jonathan Carbo and the Howard Insurance Group. They are happy to give a second look. If you've got had a bad renewal, or you've got a renewal coming up that you're a little nervous about, contact the Howard Insurance Group. They're not a magic bullet, but they may be able to save you some money. They may be able to provide you a different option that could be really impactful on your business's bottom line. You got to keep the people that do the work in the building, and that's what benefits often do. And so Jonathan Carbo is happy to help you out with that. He's online at highlandig.com. It's the Highland Insurance Group, online at highlandig.com. As I mentioned here, on this Thursday, final day of SEC Media Days, LSU went first this morning. Also have heard from Mississippi State and Arkansas this morning. Texas will be the finisher here, and that'll be Arch Manning, Steve Sarkisian, right about now, as a matter of fact, maybe a little bit later, in the big meeting room. Last year, at this point in the event, it was a complete ghost town. I wouldn't suggest it's a complete ghost town today, but it is thinned out significantly. That's both on Radio Row as well as in the main ballroom there. So there's still Texas and Arch Manning, who's a Heisman favorite, that are rolling through here. We'll talk about all of those teams as we move forward here on this Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. We're brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. We'll take a timeout, come back, and talk about some other teams outside of LSU next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Look, it's hot out there, y'all. It is really, really hot. Hydration is so important all year round. It's essential for overall health, for performance, and plays a key role in how your body functions every single day. Proper hydration helps support your energy, your focus, your recovery. If you're outside for, say, 45 minutes, just under an hour, look, you need to drink a cup of water every 15 minutes and avoid those peak heat hours in the middle of the day. Work out in the morning, work out in the evening. If you're out longer than an hour, need to add electrolytes. Aim for a 2-to-1 water to sports drink ratio. And if you're dehydrated and need medical attention, find your nearest Ochsner Urgent Care at ochsner.org/UC. That's ochsner.org/UC.
Live from the 2026 SEC Football Media Days in Tampa. Presented by FMOL Health, Our Lady of the Lake, Relief Windows, Rev Fiber, and Parish Construction and Roofing.
From Radio Row in Tampa, Florida, SEC Media Days 2026. Thursday show is brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. You know, right before I sat down to do the show, last person I heard from was Jeff Lebby. He was up there at the podium representing Mississippi State. Later on in the show today, you'll hear our sit-down with Kelly Jones, all-conference corner for the Bulldogs. And it's a big year for Mississippi State. There's no two ways about it. Jeff Lebby is 1-15 in Southeastern Conference games through 2 seasons in Starkville. That's got to start to change this year. And Mississippi State they need some continuity. Obviously, there's a tragedy that befalls the program when Mike Leach passes away, and then they hire Zach Arnett, and then Zach Arnett turns out not to be the right guy, so then he's fired, and they go out and they hire Jeff Lebby, and things aren't going very well, and you just don't want to make another change. You don't want to just start over again. You just got your feet on the ground after a really rocky 3 year with 3 head coaches in 3 years. That's just really hard on a program. You need some continuity, but you also have to win some games. And look, Mississippi State was closer than I remember last year. I went back and looked through the season, and yeah, there were some times where they got smoked. Like, they did not play Ole Miss particularly close. Missouri got after them. Georgia beat them by 21 points. Like, there were some games where they got beat. But there were also some games that they were right in. Like, they went to Austin, Texas, and had a 17-point lead. And they couldn't hold it. Lost the game to the Longhorns 45-38. They go to the Swamp against a team that was reeling, about to fire their coach, and you lose a 2-point game at Florida. And I thought they were right in the game with Tennessee. They lose that game by 7. But they got to start winning some of these close games. The only game they won last year was in league play was at Arkansas. They won by 3 points. So they're going to have to be better in tight games, because I don't think Mississippi State's going to go out there and boat race a lot of teams. So you're going to have to win in the margins. And speaking with some of the Mississippi State media members, speaking with Brian Haydad, so they did some things late in games. They did some things in close games that really cost them. And if they don't fix that, it's going to repeat itself. The big hope for Mississippi State this year rests with Kamari Taylor, who's here today. He is the best high school prospect at quarterback that has ever come to the university. He is huge. He is fast. He ran for 175 yards on Ole Miss last year. And he's going to have to be the guy that spearheads this turnaround for Jeff Levy's team. We just heard from Jeff Levy, as I mentioned, in the main ballroom, talked about how much he thinks of the personnel that they've got. He feels like this is the best roster he's had. Now, that's a common refrain in July. I get that. But you do have some guys back from last year. Fluff Bothwell at running back is a guy that has been around for a year in Starkville, but has been a bell cow ball carrier in college football for 3 years. You've got your starting center back in Cannon Boone, and they're going to have to go as that offense and Kamari Taylor goes. The interesting thing on the other side of the ball for Mississippi State is they brought back a familiar face in Zach Arnett. And Zach Arnett did a really good job as Mike Leach's defensive coordinator. And he just was not ready for that gig after Mike Leach died. And it all kind of unraveled. And then, of course, he goes to Ole Miss, coincidentally kind of, and then comes back to Mississippi State. And now he's in charge of running that defense. And the defenses under Jeff Levy have not been good. Now, you can blame that on former coordinator. You can blame that on personnel. It's probably a combination of both, but they have to get that fixed. Because you look at some of these scores, Tennessee scored 41 on them. A&M scored 39 on them. Texas scored 45 on them. Arkansas scored 35. Georgia scored 41. Missouri scored 49. Ole Miss scored 38. That number's got to come significantly down for Mississippi State this year. We know that LSU did not play Mississippi State last year. It's just an oddity over the last 2 years. LSU has played Mississippi State more than any opponent in school history. Now the Bulldogs come back onto the schedule. And you look at where that game falls for Mississippi State, they will have a bye week leading up to LSU. They play Alabama, and they've got to bye and play LSU. So it is in Tiger Stadium, and it's a game that LSU absolutely should win, but you got to take care of your business in those games, especially when you're considering that Mississippi State's going to be coming off of a bye week. I think for me, as I look at Mississippi State, Levy has to find a way to get 2 SEC wins, and it would probably behoove him to get a third. Like, that's the way I look at it. And so there are some options. Like, at South Carolina is potentially winnable. Missouri coming to Starkville is potentially winnable. Vanderbilt in Starkville is winnable. Auburn in Starkville is winnable. Like, they've got some opportunities, and I think they're going to be in some games. I think Jeff Levy's a pretty good coach, but it's a hard place to win. And, it's a place that has not won a lot lately, and certainly he's got to change that. I think one of the things that I think about nationally, and then I think about Mississippi State, because I heard this from an Arkansas media member earlier this week. What happened in Bloomington, Indiana over the last 2 years has changed the perspective of a lot of fan bases who have just been fine trying to get to 6 or 7 wins. Like, if you can do it in Indiana, why can't you do it here? And I think that is going to light a fire under some different fan bases and alumni bases. And so it's not okay to just show up and get your 6th win and go to the Liberty Bowl and be like, okay. At a time, like, that was a realistic understanding of, like, who you are. And I've said that about, like, Nebraska for so long. They were running off coaches who were winning 8 or 9 games. Like, well, you're in Nebraska. That's what you do is win 8 or 9 games. You're not. But then you look up and you see what Indiana did, and it's like, oh, well, I guess we can change the way we view this whole kind of thing. And I had to do that myself. I've always said there are haves and have-nots, and the have-nots have no chance. I've always said that. And I would go, there's a reason why they never win at Cal. There's a reason why they never win at Temple. There's a reason why they never win at Boston College. And I can't really say that out loud anymore because Indiana was in the playoff last year, 2 years ago, and then won the national championship and beat the brakes off everybody. Just embarrassed Alabama in the Rose Bowl. And I'm not suggesting that everybody at Mississippi State's going, Indiana just won. Well, we better win 10 games this year. But it does change the way I personally have viewed some teams that haven't historically been 10, 11 win teams that haven't competed for conference championship games, because you can do it. And with the playoff being expanded to 12, teams can get in. I mean, I feel like there's a different way to look at things now, and I don't anticipate much for Mississippi State this year, but I do think that changes the way that you kind of view the college football world. We'll see. We'll come back and close out the hour. It's a Thursday edition of the Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. Come back with us.
The Hunt Palmer Show. Palmer Show.
Fabry Chevrolet GMC, FabryChevrolet.com, FabryChevrolet.com. Got some great deals going on at Fabry Chevrolet GMC on Highway 61 in St. Francisville. You can make that short drive up from Baton Rouge. If you're looking for a new truck, looking for a new SUV, that's your stop. GMC is offering employee pricing on the 2026 GMC Sierra 1500 Denali's now until August 3rd. You can get up to $8,000 off of select Denali's. Chevy's offering 0% APR financing for 5 years on the 2026 Silverado 1500s, plus no monthly payments for 90 days now until August 3rd. It's all there at Fabry Chevrolet GMC, online at fabrychevrolet.com. SEC Media Days 2026, just about in the books, but we'll be here until 6 o'clock. Matt Moscona with After Further Review will kind of shut things down here. The crowd is thinned out considerably, as you might expect. Texas trying to keep the show going until the very, very end, and there are some people that are going to wait it out until the end, but it's not, we're at, I would say, 40% capacity from what things were on Monday and Tuesday of the week. It's always a very, very fun week for us. I hope you've enjoyed our content made possible by FMOL Health, Our Lady of the Lake, Parish Construction and Roofing, Relief Windows, and Rev Fiber. Also want to give a shout out to my guy Sean Segura and Segura Farms Premium Angus Beef. They give you our Thursday shows each and every week. I give you Sean's number every single week. If you want to do beef a different way, contact Sean Segura. If you're paying premium prices and not getting a premium product when you go pick up your ground beef, when you go get your steaks, why? Get the premium product. Prime Angus beef from Sean Segura and Segura Farms. You can find them at 225-719-1723. That's 225-719-1723. Segura Farms Premium Angus beef. Just north of Baton Rouge. Fill those freezers. It is summertime. Fall will be here before you know it. Going to be hosting folks. Want to do burgers, steaks for football games? Contact Sean Segura. Segura Farms, bringing you our Thursday shows each and every week. All right, so we did our predicted order of finishes in all conference teams, and I'll kind of go through some of my thinking on this. I'm not going to try to reinvent the wheel here. I'm not going to try to be the smartest guy in this hallway. I picked Georgia to win the SEC because Georgia's always good, and they've won the SEC 2 years in a row. 2 years ago when they won it, their schedule was just remarkably difficult, and they still got through it and won. They had to go to Austin. They had to go to Oxford. They had to play to Alabama, and they just churned through it because they're the most consistent product in the SEC right now. Georgia is going to get a lot of votes. Texas is going to get a lot of votes, but I went with the Bulldogs. I look at Georgia's schedule. I see some difficult games to navigate, no question. I think that going to Tuscaloosa is very difficult. I think that playing at Ole Miss is very difficult. But those are probably the two most difficult games. They do not play Texas. They do not play LSU. They do play Oklahoma, but that game is at home. They got Vanderbilt at home as well. Auburn's at home. Missouri is at home. I think that this is – I'm just betting on the most consistent brand in the sport in the SEC. So I'm taking Georgia. I do have Texas in that second spot. This is a Texas team that is going to potentially have 4 top 10, top 15, top 20 picks in the draft. 3 of them are here today. Arch Manning at quarterback, Goodby at offensive line, and then Colin Simmons rushing the passer is one of the best players in college football. And you got Cam Coleman as well, who may be the best wide receiver in the country. It's a loaded team in terms of talent. Sark has turned up the notch a bunch of times to get the talent to Austin, Texas, and I think they're going to be very good. They've got a difficult schedule. They got to go to Kyle Field. They've got to go to Death Valley. But I think that the talent wins out there for Texas. This is where I probably going to be pretty lonely in this projection. But I had Ole Miss and Texas A&M at 3-4. I think Ole Miss has got the best quarterback in the SEC. I think they got a great running back. I think they got a really good kicker. And I think that they are going to be a threat this year. As I told you yesterday, talking about Ole Miss, I'm not betting on the Pete Golding era to look as good as the Lane Kiffin era in Oxford. I'm not. But there are enough holdovers from the Lane Kiffin era to make this thing look pretty good in the first year of the Pete Golding era. They've got a remade offensive line. That's a big deal, obviously. They've got a remade wide receiver group. That's a big deal, obviously. And they do have to retool the defense that loses its best pass rusher to LSU, loses its leading tackler to LSU. Like, I'm not naive enough to think that Ole Miss is just exactly what they were last year. But I think they're pretty good. And I think the guy under center is going to make a lot of plays. I sat in the Superdome. and watch Trinidad Chambliss run around on Kirby Smart's defense. And yes, Lane Kiffin had a lot to do with that, even though he wasn't with them currently. And yes, Charlie Weiss Jr. had a lot to do with that. And no, John David Baker is not those two guys. He did work for them, but he's not those two guys. I just still believe that Ole Miss is going to be pretty good this year. I've got them at 3rd. I think A&M is my sleeper team to win the Southeastern Conference. They certainly have to overhaul the offensive line. Like, they have to overhaul the whole thing. They have one returning starter. Tyree Adams and Cohen Eccles are probably the guys on the left side. But I just believe in Elko. I think their defense will be great. They've got a very, very, very veteran quarterback who maybe I'm just scarred by what he did to LSU two years in a row, just absolutely cooking LSU 2 years in a row. And there are a lot of people that think that's a crazy prediction, but I've got A&M there. I've got Alabama at 5. I was talking with some people about Alabama. Here's the deal. I can never remember being at this event. I think I've gone in 2011, 12, 13, 14, 25, 26. I think I've been to 6 of these. And I realized that 2011, 2012, 2013, 1, it was the Nick Saban era. 2, we were in Alabama. So it's just a different deal being in Tampa, and we're well removed from the Saban era, even though he's here. There's just never been this little buzz about Alabama. Never. Like, I don't even think I've had a conversation about Alabama, other than to say that Kalen DeBoer is boring in the microphone, which doesn't really matter. There's no one is talking about Alabama, and I cannot wait. We'll get we'll get all the predictions tomorrow. The SEC will release them, and I'll talk about them on the show. We'll be back in studio. I cannot wait to see where Alabama is projected. I've got them right there at 5. I do have LSU at 6, full disclosure. I've got Alabama at 5, and I just don't know what to think of them. I don't know if people are going to give them first-place votes. Like, when we were in Hoover for this thing, there was a big bias toward Alabama and even toward Auburn because there were just more local people with ties to Alabama and Auburn doing the voting. You remove that when you travel it around. It was also the Saban era, so they were getting a lot of first-place votes anyway, as they should have. But I'm curious to see if they get, like, a good amount, if they get, like, none. And, again, the results on the field will tell the story, not what the media people say in July. But, like, I'm curious to see what people think of Alabama. I've got them at 5th. I've got LSU at 6. LSU is probably in a group with Ole Miss, A&M, Bama, Oklahoma, Tennessee, like Missouri. Like, that group is probably where LSU is, and I think they'll probably be towards the top of it. People in this room have a lot of respect for Lane Kiffin as a football coach. That's another thing that I've been very, very cognizant of in my conversations, walking in and out through the ballroom, at dinner tables, in the hotel bar. When you have conversations with people, everyone almost unanimously agrees that Lane Kiffin is a brilliant coach. And so I think that LSU will get a lot of respect for that. Maybe I'm just scarred by last year's implosion, and maybe that's silly because LSU's got a different guy in charge now. But I've got LSU there at 6, which I think probably puts you in the neighborhood, assuming a Clemson win, which isn't reflected in the SEC predicted order to finish. But if you assume a Clemson win, that's got LSU between 10-2 and 9-3 or 8-4, and I probably think LSU right now is closer to it. I would lean toward 9-3 based on the difficulty of the schedule. I'm not trying to bum everybody out here in the middle of July. I just feel like when I look at LSU, I feel like I have some question marks about the defensive line. I have question marks about the cornerback depth. I have question marks about the quarterback and his health, and then the productivity. And then I want to see if LSU runs the ball. And so I've got them right there at 6. Oklahoma at 7. I trust Vanderbilt a little bit more now. For those that have been bashing me for my Vanderbilt takes over the last 2 years, I got Vanderbilt up at number 8, Tennessee at 9. I've got Auburn down there at 10. And I think this is where you start to get towards the bottom of the league. I got South Carolina at 11, Florida at 12. Some people think that Florida is going to be pretty good. I gushed about John Summerall for a good bit yesterday. I feel like that's a guy who has a real chance if Florida makes the investment to turn this thing around. But right now, I don't know a lot about their quarterback play. And I don't know enough about their ability to put together a roster financially that can compete at the top half of the league. So I've got Florida down there at 12, Missouri at 13. That'll be lower than most people have them. I feel like I just err on that side with Missouri every time, and Eli Drinkwitz generally proves me wrong. Missouri never beats anybody that's good. They just do a good job of winning games they're supposed to win, and more often than not, that's going to get you to 7 or 8 wins, and that's kind of where I feel Missouri generally floats about. I was looking at Missouri's schedule earlier today, And you look at a light start. There's no two ways about it. Arkansas Pine Bluff, at Kansas, Troy, at Mississippi State, Florida. There is a real chance they could be 5-0. But beyond that, it gets a little sticky. It gets a little bit sticky because you got A&M, which is in Columbia. Then you go to Ole Miss. Then you go to Arkansas. Then you've got Texas at Georgia. So in a 4-week stretch, 5-week stretch, let's call it that, it's A&M, at Ole Miss, at Arkansas, Texas, at Georgia. That's like 4 losses to me. And so that's why I knocked Missouri down a couple pegs. If they lose one to Mississippi State on the road or to Kentucky, it could be even worse than that. Drink is in a great spot. He just signed a new deal. He's not going anywhere, and he's done a really, really good job. I don't even mean to put like hot seat talk on the Missouri table, but I just don't trust their talent level. I just never do. I don't think Missouri gets great players, and so we'll see what they're able to manage this year. Got them at 13. And then I've got what I believe to be the bottom 3 teams in the league, Kentucky, Arkansas, and Mississippi State. I think it could be really, really rough for all of them. The wild card there is clearly Kentucky, like clearly Kentucky, because I don't know what a Will Stein team is going to look like. I'll tell you this. Will Stein did say yesterday that Joe Sloan is calling plays. So my caveat to y'all that I've been saying all this time, don't worry, don't talk about Joe Sloan being the offensive coordinator at Kentucky and thinking, well, he didn't do a good job at LSU. He'll do a terrible job at Kentucky. Why would they make that hire? I kept saying, well, it doesn't matter because the head coach is the offensive coordinator from Oregon who came over, and he's going to run the show. Well, he's not. He's not calling the plays. Joe Sloan's calling the plays. We found that out yesterday. So there's a wild card there at Kentucky because they are going through a complete transformation. We spoke about Kentucky earlier this week. I think that was on Tuesday of this week. And they were like, look, and LSU plays Kentucky this year. They'll be in Lexington, and I believe it's still Kroger Field, which is just a wild name for a stadium to name after a grocery store. But that's neither here nor there. I don't know what they're going to look like. You knew what Kentucky was going to look like the whole Stoops era. They were going to be big and physical on defense. They were going to be disciplined on defense. They were going to be big and physical on the offensive line. They were going to try to run the football, and they probably were going to be terrible passing. That was Kentucky. We'll have some NFL defenders. We'll have a running back that goes for 1,200 yards, but we'll finish 15th in the SEC in passing. That was Kentucky every year. And now you bring in Will Stein, and it's going to look way different. They're going to play with tempo. They're going to spread the field. They're going to throw it more often. They're probably not going to be as physical. I don't know what to make of the defense. Kentucky is a complete wild card. I put them down there at the bottom. That's a game that obviously you feel like LSU absolutely has to go to Lexington and win. But it's a team that I don't have a good feel for because it's just a complete transformation of what they were. Now, if you look at LSU's schedule and you look at my predicted order of finish, which doesn't hold any water, but it's my show and I picked the order of finish. LSU's 9 league games will be against number 2 Texas, number 3 Ole Miss, number 4 A&M, number 5 Alabama, number 9 Tennessee, number 10 Auburn, number 14 Kentucky, number 15 Arkansas, number 16 Georgia. So better put, you are missing only one of my top 5, and that's Texas. And then you miss a little bit in the middle of my rankings. You do not play Oklahoma, who's 7. You don't play Vanderbilt, who's 8. You don't play South Carolina, who's 11. You don't play Florida, who's 12. And you don't play Missouri, who's 13, right there in the middle. So you've got some of the teams at the bottom, Kentucky, Arkansas, Mississippi State. You've got all the teams at the top, sans Georgia, and Texas. So you don't play, sans Georgia at the top. It's a schedule that has been discussed a lot this week. The consensus with LSU's schedule is that it is very, very manageable. It has a lot of name brands, a lot of heavy hitters, but you got to look at where those games are being played. Clemson's in Tiger Stadium. Texas is in Tiger Stadium. Bama's in Tiger Stadium. A&M's in Tiger Stadium. Like, you're getting a lot of teams in Death Valley and a lot of times at night. And those are games that LSU is going to have to take advantage of. Then you play some of your lesser teams are on the road. You have to go to Auburn, who's got a first-year head coach. You've got to go to Arkansas, who's got a first-year head coach. You got to go to Mississippi State. Mississippi State comes to you. You got to go to Kentucky, who's got a first-year coach. You've got a lot of teams that are breaking in new coaches, have new programs. Now, you are too, but those are your road games. They are fairly manageable. And if you can sweep on the road and you feel good about LSU and Tiger Stadium, it's easy to make the projection that LSU's got a chance at this thing. And most people feel that way. I certainly think they have a chance at it. Just putting it through in my rankings, I've got LSU like on the playoff bubble as opposed to a team that's likely to make the playoff or has really no shot to make a bubble. I think LSU's is kind of a bubble team. And we'll know a lot about this LSU football team when we come out of September. Like, you'll know a lot. How do they handle Clemson, at Ole Miss, and Texas A&M? If you're 4-0, Katie bar the door. We'll see. If you're 2-2, like, you're probably not a threat to make the playoff. You'd have to run the table after that. And if you're 3-1, you're probably about where everyone thought LSU would be. And that's kind of the chalk for this LSU team as you look forward into 2026. All right, that's my predicted order to finish. I put through the all-conference teams as well, but I don't think anybody knows who those players are, so we're not going to dive too deep into that. But that will all come out tomorrow, and we'll take a look at it on tomorrow's show when we are back in studio. All right, we have done, I guess, by my count, it's 8 hours total, so we've done 7 hours from Radio Row here in Tampa, Florida. One more to come. If you missed any of the first hour today, catch it on demand wherever you find your sound. Just search Hunt Palmer Show. Like, subscribe, rate, and review. We always appreciate y'all for helping us out with that. We'll hear from Mississippi State defensive back Kelly Jones in hour number 2. We'll talk about the Arkansas Razorbacks in hour number 2, and we'll also take a look back at our in-depth chart series at safety, where LSU's got Ty Benefield, Deshaun Spears, and Tamarcus Cooley. Just a teaser for that. I've got a pretty good feeling about LSU's safety group. So we'll do that after we pause for Sports Center. On the other side of the break, our last hour of the week. We are at SEC Media Days in Tampa, Florida. Come back with us for hour 2.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Before we close out the hour, let me tell you my friends at Marucci, online at MarucciSports.com. That's MarucciSports.com. Go take a tour. Marucci is such a cool spot. You can do 2 things when you take that tour. One, you can learn the story about how 2 former pros and their trainer went from a backyard shed in Baton Rouge to the official bout of Major League Baseball. It's a great story to hear how they made that evolution over just 2 decades. You can also check out the Hitter's House. It's incredible. You got to take some hacks. If you got a youth baseball player under your roof, a youth softball player in your roof that's looking to work on his or her game, weather independent, doesn't matter if it's raining, doesn't matter if it's 102, you can just go in there and take some cuts in the Hitter's House. It's open 24/7, key card access whenever you please. Get into the Hitter's House and make it happen. It's all there at Marucci. They're online at MarucciSports.com. It's our friends over at Marucci, online at MarucciSports.com.